am trying to talk to you about Herman Melville's masterpiece called Mardi, Mardi. This is the second video that I'm making about this 22-hour book that I spent 3 weeks reading because it is so good, but it's so much allegory that's probably way over my head, but anyway, these people are traveling through a mythical chain of islands, and one of them was the island of Marima, and it was a heavily religious area, and their traveling party travels to this holy land to find a hermit who guards a sacred peak. However, the hermit is ultimately revealed to be Hivo-Haiti, the high pontiff of the island, and he's cloaked in deep mystery, sitting silent, ghastly in the dark heart of the jungle. He initially appears to be strange and eccentric recluse to the poet Yumi, but he turns out to be the inmost oracle and a supreme religious leader of the island. He's acting to conceal a systemic corruption of the clergy and perpetuate holy superstitions. He resides in the sacred retreat in a hollowed-out tree in a cave surrounded by dark mists, ancient shrines, and skulls of the previous religious leaders. The scene in Melville's primary allegorical critique is of the religious institutions, and that through the hermit, Melville satires how the religious leaders are hiding in plain sight behind a veil of mystery to trick gullible pilgrims. Babylanja is a character, and his most famous and haunting soliloquy occurs near the end of the journey, Volume 2, Chapter 9, as he stands by the sea grappling with the limits of his mortal body, and he's trying to understand his own soul, constantly wrestles with the boundaries of what man can know, and he often quotes fictional philosopher Baridiana, realizing much philosophy is a cyclical repetition of thoughts. The core of his Babylonja's soliloquy is characterized by the undoubting doubter agonizing over whether an afterlife exists or whether human souls are immortal. And then he's got this inner demon that's called Azagedi, who's a humorous inner spirit demon who frequently interrupts his contemplations to mock absurdities of life. I'm reading from the same thing I'm shooting from, so Babylonja functions within the novel's royal court as a resident philosopher, skeptic, and truth seeker. He constantly questions the nature of truth and religion. His search leads him to a peaceful, rational society of Serenia. He nominally was an advisor to the island ruler King Media. Babylonja often subverts royal decorum using wit and absurdity to mock political pretense and human vanity, and serves as a mouthpiece for Melville's own intellectual spiritual struggles. Oh, my thing's just closed out. I'm sorry, hold on 1 second. Here's a... Oops, sorry, hold on. I'm not starting this over. It's a direct quote. Where are the tails of the tadpoles after their gradual metamorphosis into frogs? Have frogs any tails, old man? Our tails, Mohi, were worn off by the process of civilization, especially at the period when our fathers began to adopt sitting posture. The fundamental evidence of all civilization, for neither apes nor savages can be said to sit. Invariably, they squat on their hams. Among barbarous tribes, benches and settles are unknown, but, my Lord Media, your liege and loving subject, I cannot sufficiently deplore the deprivation of your royal tail, the stiff and vertebrate member, and we now find in those rustic kinsmen we have disowned, would have been useful as a supplement to your royal legs, whereas my good lord now is in fain to trotter on two stations, were he only a kangaroo, like the monarchs of old. The majesty of Odo would be dignified by standing firm on a tripod. There was a chapter dedicated to surgeons, because some of these sailors, they got hurt out there. They were cutting off their own limbs, and it was like a multiple day process. They were at it, like I don't want to get too far into it here, but talks about a cavern filled with the skeletal remains of the ancient coral kings. A character of Babylonja rejects the hollow promise of the inherited glory. Many ages ago, there reigned in Wam a king called Ti. Ti's succession to the sovereignty was long disputed by his brother. I think I mentioned that last one. Sorry, I had a lot of other stuff going on this Memorial Day weekend. Okay, so then we have a massacre. We have in chapter XXII, the Parky. The narrator and his companions intercept a drifting boat. Aboard are the survivors of a violent attack, including Parky and the hostile Pacific Islanders. The ship's crew member, Samoa, brutally guns down the remaining attackers in the boat, eventually shooting them until the vessel itself capsizes. The haunting hull of the vessel later bears innumerable traces of the tragic massacre. the character Samoa is introduced as a native of Navigator Islands. The American narrator and his companion Jarl discover Samoa hiding aboard a derelict, half-sunken ship, having lost his left arm in the skirmish. And because he's from Navigator Island, Samoa is renowned in the novel as his experience with the sea, particularly his expertise in oyster diving. Mardi was Melville's third book, it says. Oh, if I could find the preface. Hold on. Melville left a preface. And I love books with preface because it's like a little bit of a warning label. Here's the chapter 24 is dedicated to the College of Physicians and Surgeons. It says, in Polynesia, every man is his own barber, his own surgeon, cutting off his own beard or arm, as occasion demands. No unusual thing for the warriors of Ravu to saw off their own limbs, desperate and woundedly in battle. But owing to the clumsiness of the instruments employed, which is they were using a shell, a flinty serrated shell. But they would not suffer any friend to help them, maintaining that the matter so nearly concerning a warrior is far better attended to by himself. Hence it may be said that they amputated themselves at leisure, and hanging up their tools when they're tired, but thus beholden to no one for aught connected with the practice of surgery. They never cut off their own heads. There was probably a lot of humor in it, but like I said, some of it is so deep. I don't even know who those people are. You could probably study for weeks on that book. Here's another quote. This is all wrong as well. Hate a seraph as a shark. Both were made by the same hand, and that sharks are lovable, witness in domestic endearments. No fury so ferocious as not to have some amiable side. In the wilderness, a leopard mother caresses her cub as Hagar did Ishmael, or the Queen of France a dolphin. We know not what to do when we hate. And I have the word of my gentlemanly friend Stanhope for it, that he who declared he loved a good hater was but a respectable sort of Hottentot at best. No very Gentile epithet this, that through coming from the gentlest man, but when the digger of dictionaries said that saying of his, he was assured not much of a Christian. However, it is hard for one given up to constitutional hippos like him to be filled with the milk and meekness of the Gospels. Yet with deference I deny my old Uncle Johnson really believed in the sentiment ascribed to him. Love a hater indeed. Who smacks his lip over gall? Now hate is a thankless thing, so let us only hate hatred, and once give love play, we will fall in love with a unicorn. Ah, the easiest way is the best, and to hate a man must work hard. Love is a delight, and hate is a torment. Haters are thumbscrews, Scotch boots, and Spanish inquisitions into themselves. In 5 words, they were a Siamese diphthong. He who hates is a fool. Okay, so in this journey, the narrator and his companion are adrift in a tiny, fragile boat on an endless ocean, and they confess that if they were to build an altar to any god in their despair, they were going to build it to Neptune, the sea god, who is directly invoked as the symbol of the untamed waters within the narrator noting that certain creatures of the sea, schools of fish, and belong to the green, mossy province of Neptune. The narrator is built to act as a metaphorical journey through the calendar and zodiac, and it ends in September, which is the exact month and year the planet Neptune was discovered. I'm still a flat earther. I mean, but there's definitely something up there in the sky. Here's the preface. Not long ago, having published 2 narratives of voyages in the Pacific, which in many quarters were received with incredulity, and the thought occurred to me of indeed writing a romance of a Polynesian adventure and publishing it as such to see whether the fiction might not possibly be received for a verity. In some degree, the reverse of my previous experience. This thought was the germ of others which have resulted in Mardi, New York, January 1849. It definitely talks about these people sailing along the Tropic of Capricorn, I believe. The very first chapter talks about the Arctic Circle. It says, this most unforeseen determination on the part of my captain to measure the Arctic Circle was nothing more or less than a tactic contravention of the agreement between us, and here, heaven help me, he was going to carry me off to the pole. And on such a vile errand, too. Other places they visited was Colombo, which was the outer reef islands consisting of Vivenza and Canida. It was a K. They're spelling with a K. K-A-N-N-E-E-D-A. Canida. Representing Canada and the Northern Dominions. And then we have Dominor representing Great Britain, maritime supremacy and imperial aggression. The island of the Cripples, which is Hulumulu, desolate land by society's outcasts. And then Serena, which is an ideally peaceful utopian based on brotherhood and reason. And then Queen Hautia's domain, which was Flozella, and is the final destination where the protagonist Taj seeks the woman Yila. Odu is the realm of King Media, where the main characters, Taji, Media, Jarl, Mohi, and Babalajana, begin their philosophical journey. Valapi is known as the Island of Pearls, featuring the narrative's initial stay. The island of Juam was a hospitable island known for pleasure, wine, and feasting. Ohono was ruled by King Uhanako, a militaristic, rebellious, and fiercely independent land. And an island called Mondo was a cluster of islands ruled by a powerful monarch where travelers encounter various religious allegories. Mardi and the Voyage Thither is a heavily philosophical, fantastical novel that traces a young American sailor's escape from a whaling ship into a mythical Pacific chain of islands, and serves as a sprawling allegory critiquing 19th century society. Unicorns are mentioned. They are often personified through Narwhal, whose spiritual tusk was historically sold as unicorn horn. And it plays heavily into maritime legends and Melville's taxonomy in Moby Dick. Humpback whales. Melville extensively documented the humpback whale alongside the sperm whales in his whaling novels. He introduced a bizarre interaction involving a dwarf canoeing over to the humpback king, the King Bello of Dominora. It's a sprawling satirical voyage through a fictional archipelago. The main narrator is Taji, accompanied by his crew, which includes King Media, which is a demigod ruler of Odo, and acts as one of the central foils for debating religion, society, and politics. The novel follows the American sailor who becomes known as the demigod Taji. And his companions as they're traveling from island to island. These islands act as a microcosm for the real world. There's Taji. He's the seeker of the abducted mystical maiden Yila. And we have Media, who is a pragmatic philosopher, king of the island Odu. Babylonja, a maddened thinker who debates the nature of reality. Mohai, which is Braidbeard, was an elderly storyteller, venerable chronologer, and Yumi was a poetic youth. We have Babylonja and his protagonist Taji, and King Media the historian, and Mohi the poet. Mohi and the poet Yomi, the party voyages through the islands searching for the lost maiden Yila. Babylonja is the philosophical center of the story, acting as the court philosopher to King Media. Babylonja is brilliant, wandering intellectual whose monologues debate satirize the 19th century society of religion and transcendentalism. Ultimately, Babylonja abandons his relentless quest for the unattainable recognition of the limits of mortal understanding, and he chooses to settle on the island of Serena, and he dedicates himself to a quiet life of charity, simple faith, and brotherhood. It does mention antediluvian smugglers, which I looked up really what that meant. And antediluvian meant, I believe, before the flood, and smuggling obviously was an illicit black market trade. Talks about chapter 12, an old man with steel gray eyes, hair and a beard, and a horrible necklace of jawbones. An ornament of a necklace of jawbones. So, it just has a lot of really cool customs. We have the manufacturer of gods. It's an ultimate satirical jab at organized religion. This island was Hivaneva. It's an artisan on Marima who He's an artisan on Marima who produced mass wooden idols. Mass produces wooden idols and fixes them up using shark skin as sandpaper. Dolima is a deity who demands blood sacrifices, and the priest maintains specific hereditary family members who are hunted down as sacrifices when festival time arrives. Mohi Braidbeard explains that travelers that the air on Mardi is thick with semi-intelligible spirits. They're gods of heaven and gods of the earth, gods of peace, gods of war, gods of ghosts and of thieves, of singers and dancers, lean men and house thatchers. Ru is described as a nimble god who sinned and fell from the skies onto the inaccessible tall peak of Ofo, forever trapping him on the mortal plane. Figures like King Medea rules on the island of Oda and commands his subjects to worship him as a demigod. His gods are this massive satirical Parthenon ranging from revered creator deities to manufactured wooden idols. Melville uses them to explore the Polynesian myth, poke fun at religious corruption, and question the nature of belief in human existence. The major deities in the book were Oro, the supreme creator and god of Mardi, absolute lord paramount, mysterious, distant, and beyond the reach of human satire, and another god, Alma, who was the son of Oro, represented a Christ-like figure of peace and love, whose teachings have been corrupted by false priests. The island gods of Marima, which is the religious epicenter of Mardi, was ruled by the pontiff Hivohiti, who claims to be a god himself. Here's a direct quote. A garrulous guide to the party, Braidbeard soon brought us nigh to the great Mori of Marama, the burial place of the pontiffs, and a rural promenade for certain idols there inhabiting. Here and there thatched arbors were thrown over the streams for the accommodation of the devotees, who in these consecrated waters issuing from a spring in Morai bathed their garments, that long life might ensue. Yet Braidbeard assured us, sometimes as it happened, that diverse feeble old men, zealously donning their raiment immediately after immersion, became afflicted with rheumatics, and instances were related to their falling down dead in their pursuit of longevity. It says they were through a bed of shallow water, and Mohi observed that as they went, that their feet were washed on every step, whereas they went to tread the dusty earth would be to desecrate the holy Marae by transferring there to the base soil of less sacred ground. There was a little, like a poem in it. I'm going to read it to you. We drop our dead in the sea, the bottomless, bottomless sea, each bubble a hollow sigh as it sinks forever and aye. We drop our dead in the sea, the dead reek not of aught. We drop our dead in the sea never gives it a thought. Sink, sink, O corpse, still sink, far down to the bottomless sea, where the unknown forms do prowl, down, down in the bottomless sea. 'Tis night above, and night all around, and night will it be with thee, as thou sinkest and sinkest for aye, deeper down in the bottomless sea. episode.